The second reality that we as special needs parents have to face is that we have all suffered a loss. We have all suffered a loss. What we have been taught to do and what we see people doing around us is we minimize, we get distracted, we use distractions, busyness, avoidance. But by not recognizing and dealing with this pain, it festers and it affects us in our relationships. We'll talk about the death of a dream on two different levels. The first one is this: missed expectations. Another way of saying that is that this was not how it was supposed to be. Every parent has played a movie as they've gotten ready for their child to come into their family. The movie could start with mom being pregnant and all the way up to delivery. But it goes from going to the hospital and then having the baby and seeing the baby in the nursery.
Our son Riley was our third child, born perfect, just like the other two. Right number, toes, fingers, ears, nose, everything.
But somewhere along the way, each one of us had to say to ourselves, we're not in Kansas anymore. And my question is, do you remember when that was for you?
2 weeks to the day after he was born, a blood vessel in his brain burst. Left with the results much like a major stroke.
Maybe it was that diagnosis.
Jeremy was our fourth son, and when he was 2.5, he was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor.
Maybe it was after a season of hoping and praying that what was going on was going to go away.
And I just look up at the stars and I think, Lord, this is too much for me. I think that I would like to resign.
Maybe it was after a season of ignoring that this was not what we expected, and so if I just pretend it's not in existence, it won't be in existence. But it's gone on long enough that we had to say something's wrong. His first signs were things where he couldn't talk. He couldn't control his tongue and things, and so we knew there were some problems. When he, just before he was 3 years old, is when Micah's behavior started to come out, the other side effect of his fetal alcohol syndrome.
I've had a lot of anger at his birth mother and just a lot of resentment in general, probably to God, to his birth mother, to the whole idea that this was somebody else's choice and I have to bear the consequences and live with those consequences.
And a dream like that, dying, is no small thing. And we need to deal with that, name it for what it is, and wrestle with it so it doesn't affect us ongoing. The second thing that happened is we had missed experiences. Another way of saying that is, I wish I could have had this experience. I wish this could have happened. We could have done this together. When my oldest son was 14 years old, I remember talking to him about what kind of man he was going to be. Has he thought about the values he was going to have in his life? I was talking to him about what he thought about girls and how he should think about girls, things like that. I remember laying in bed with him and asking him those questions, and he was seriously looking back at me and saying, yeah, Dad, this, and things like, Dad, I want to be like you. Those kind of things that a dad just dreams about. You know what I get to talk about with my son Mike at 14? I get to remind him, son, have you gone to the bathroom yet? And then when he goes, I get to help clean him up. It's a missed experience.
My tears are, selfishness. Want to carry on a conversation with my child. My tears are for him because he cannot communicate. I can't imagine being stuck in a body, in his mind, trying to live without being able to communicate.
These events can catch us on our heels and knock us back time and time and time again if we don't factor them into our daily lives and just say, this is how it is. These things can happen. things can get changed, and we go, it's okay. It's all right for that to happen. Those lost experiences do not need to define our relationship with our child or define the child themselves. It can't become, oh, that child means that things go bad, things are horrible, they wreck everything. And I really don't like them that much because they do those things. We can't go there. What we need to say is, no, that is part of our life. That is part of our relationship with this child because they have deficiencies that they can do nothing about. And so what do? We love them for who they are. We accept them for what they can do. And we make them part of our family and we all accept it. And then we don't have to carry around this thing with us all the time.
I remember when Jeremy was diagnosed, prior to that, the thought of ever losing my family was like overwhelming. When we went through that with Jeremy, I remember distinctly thinking, I know that no matter what God takes me through in the future, I know beyond a shadow of doubt, He's going to take me through it and He'll be there. And it put to rest the worry about what was going to happen, even in our life now. I don't worry about tomorrow because I know if it happens and when it happens, and if God ever decides to take Jeremy, that He will be there to give us the strength to go through. I would not have learned that in my life had I not experienced what I've experienced with Jeremy. For that, I'm thankful.
My tears are not for his daily development. He may never read. He may never be able to grow up and play like a typical child. He may never be able to, the typical things. Go to college or hold a typical job. My tears are not for that because I know that God has built him the way he is, and we love him for that, and we love Ty, our son, for that. My tears are selfishness, want to carry on a conversation with my child. My tears are for him because he cannot communicate. I can't imagine being stuck in a body in his mind trying to live without being able to communicate. It's It's hard. It's hard to see him be frustrated, and I can't fix that.
And yet the other part of me is when he's not here, I feel really empty, and I hurt. And even though he makes my blood pressure rise, he makes me have to take meds sometimes just to cope with who he is and what he brings out and all the stress he causes. When he's not here, even though life has definitely incredibly easier, I still have a loss, and I still hurt because he's my child. He's my child, and I don't ever want to forget that. And
because now what a couple deals with is each one of them in their own way and at different levels now starts having to deal with the grief of the loss of something they either had and lost, or something that they had an expectation for and will never have. And now they're grieving that. And now what that many times can lead to is the blame game. Now it's somebody's fault that it happened. And now you can just see, if I would take the time to go through and talk about each one of the daggers that are now at your disposal in a marriage with that kind of a scenario, to look at the weapons that are now available for them between each other. Now, with that happening,
the low points come when I think about what Riley could have been. That I have two sons, and one is typical and one has special needs. But I think about Riley and Luke and me going fishing, or we're not hunters, but we might try that. We would go play golf together. It's those things that a dad and a son would want to do. Build a fence together, work on an old car together. And to know that Riley and I will never have that relationship. We will never have that to share. Being a guy and wanting to fix things, that's what I do for a living. I troubleshoot and I fix things, and I can't fix Riley. And so if I dwell on it and I let that fester, so to speak, that is really depressing for me. But when I look at it from the other side, and I look at the blessings that God has brought into my life, into our family life through Riley, God has given us a child that really all Riley knows is love. Riley knows love and acceptance, both what he receives, because that's what he needs the most. He needs to know that people love him, that people are there for him, that all he asks for is time. All he asks for is for his basic needs to be met, and for people to love him. In return, he gives exactly that same thing. He's got all the time in the world, and he's got all the love in the world. Riley's life is not clouded by the things that distract the rest of us. Work pressures, mortgage payments, down economy, elections, problems in Congress, you name it. Riley doesn't know. He doesn't care. He doesn't even sense that. Riley knows love and acceptance. And so I can have a really bad day or feel bad about the world, and I come in and Riley says, "Daddy," and smiles. Really the highlight of my day is when I get to lay down in his bed at night and read a book or tell a story or do a crazy thing we do called the lightning round, where I ask crazy questions and he gives crazy answers. But God has blessed me with an innocent child that will always be my innocent child. There's a statement that I made early on that is far more profound than I ever was before or ever have been since. But God changed my perfect child into a child that brings out perfection in others. Because when people are around Riley, you have to give up all of the baggage that's around you, because Riley doesn't live in that world. You have to give that up and enter his world, which I'm convinced is the world that God wants all of us to live in, which is the simple world of love and acceptance. Okay. All right. Next shift, right? Okay. And Michelle is here every day, on call every day. I think she summed it up once. She was in the dentist chair having her teeth cleaned, and it dawned on her that she was having to hold her phone in her hand while the hygienist cleaned her teeth, because the school could call and tell us that Riley was having a seizure. She couldn't even leave her phone in her purse while she was having her teeth cleaned.
If on this journey that I've been with Jeremy and our family, I would say the thing that stands out with me is I have learned, I'll get emotional here. I have learned that God's promises are true, and that he has promised to take us through, and he's just been with us, so it's proved it. And I know that beyond a shadow of a doubt,